Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm your host, DIANN BOEHM, and our show is The Corner Bookstore. If you're joining us for the first time, wherever you are in the world, we are thrilled to have you. And thank you to all our dedicated viewers. Dr. Jacalyn, founder and CEO of USA Global TV and Radio, is producing the show today. Our guest today is author Donna Conrad, who is an award-winning author, a journalist, an activist, a teacher, and gives voice, so importantly, gives voice to women who've been marginalized. Please welcome Donna Conrad to the show. Hi, Donna.
Hi. So good to be here.
Well, it's lovely to have you. And, you know, I'm so excited about everything that you do in your life. I always say life is chapters. And you not only have chapters, but you are living a variety of chapters at the same time. So go, girl.
This is difficult. Well, my passions revolve around giving women a voice. Because one of my favorite aphorisms is an African proverb that says, until the lion learns to write, the hunter will always be glorified.
Oh, wow.
So to me, until women begin to write history and to be recorded in history, we're always going to be subjugated. We're going to be repressed, and we're going to be basically written out of history. And yet so much of history is shaped, is molded, is directed by women. And so that has been my mission for many years.
Well, thank you. And that is so important. And you're right. There have been women leaders all around the world, you know, and we really do not in school study them enough. At least that's my humble opinion. And yet they've done really great things. And we have wonderful people in our own country from various generations that have done wonderful things as well. And so I'm glad you're bringing that to light. And also, I think I do want to talk about the book you have published, but in backstage, we were talking about the book that you're working on. And since we're talking about women's voices, would you like to share a little bit about that?
Certainly. I became interested in biblical history from a friend who talked about Mary Magdalene. And when you say Mary Magdalene, there are all kinds of reactions, but they're all related to her relationship to, quote, the greatest story ever told. And my take is this is a story that's been told for 2,000 years from a male-dominated perspective. And it's time we heard from the woman who inspired the legend. And this woman was powerful in her own right. She had her own property, her own destination, her own abilities, and yet they've been subjugated by the early church, which is the Catholic Church, which is subjugation of her as just being a disciple of Jesus. And I set about to demythify the people and events of that time, because no matter what they became later in the mythology or the belief system of Christianity, they were real people and they were living under the extreme oppression of Roman domination and occupation. And what was their life like? What did they have to go through? And what were their struggles? And how did they survive? Not only survive, but endure and rise above the oppression they were suffering.
That's incredible. And yes, you're so right. I don't know if you've seen the Chosen, the movie The Chosen, and they really bring to light more of Mary Magdalene in the show to make her more human. Well, actually make all of them human. That's one of the things I like about it. So I would love to see the book, and if you'll tell us the title, if you're allowed to tell it yet.
Oh, I am.
Okay, good. I think it should already become a movie.
Thank you. I have had many people say, this is a movie. This is a movie that needs to be made. And so it is a 4-book series called the Magdalene Chronicles. And it goes throughout her life, because her time in Judea only goes until she's 23, 24 years old. And that's the first book, which is called The Last Magdalene. And my premise, which is based on historical and archaeological evidence, is that, and this is the controversial part, that the goddess Ashara was still being worshipped, although clandestinely, by the women, even in Jerusalem. There's archaeological evidence that she was an integral part of the loving female deity that women would turn to in times of trouble and in difficult childbirths. When they needed a midwife, they went to a priestess, not a priest. And there was a time, though, when the Roman occupation came in, when goddess worship of Ashara was destroyed. And I say that was sometime between about 30 current era and the destruction of the temple in Judea around 60. And the title Magdalene, if you look it up in Hebrew, it says the Magdalene, not of Magdala, because the town of Magdala didn't exist in first century Judea. And Magdala means exalted or a high one. So my premise is she was a priestess of Ashara. And due to events in her life and her time, she became the last Magdalene. And that entire society of women who were midwives, healers, surrogates for the goddess Ashara were destroyed. And so she was raised to be this, and she was the last.
Wow, that is incredible. And I can't even wait to get a hold of this book. Can I already pre-order it, even if it's
It comes out April 9th of 2024. And as I say, there are 4 books in the series. The next is when she goes to Egypt, which is called The Lost and the Holy. Mm-hmm. And then when she goes to southern France, and it's called A Woman Unto Herself, which is where she really becomes a great teacher and healer on her own. And so they're going to be released every April, just between Easter and Passover every year.
Very smart. Very, very smart.
Good placement.
The GoFundMe page now for the movie.
Exactly. I am hoping so, because she is a dynamic, energetic, highly intelligent and highly educated woman who was, to me, not only marginalized, but maligned. Wow. And as you probably know, women in the early church were considered not particularly evil, but stained.
Yes.
And the whole concept of original sin did not come around until Christianity. There is no original sin in Hebraic doctrine. And at this time in Judea, the women could inherit property. They could own their own property. They could choose their husbands. They could choose to not be married. One interesting thing, and then I'll go on, is that the word that came across as virgin in Greek and Hebrew actually means a woman belonging to no man. And when Aramaic was transcribed to Greek, the Greeks couldn't comprehend something like that. So they meant, oh, she didn't have sex, so she was a virgin. But that's not true. She was just a woman who didn't belong to any man. And that puts a whole new spin on it.
Wow, that's amazing. It does put a whole new spin on it, and I find it fascinating. You're teaching me so much, and I'm sure our listeners, as well as our viewers, are learning a lot as well. So I appreciate all the, study and history that you're sharing with us. A, I never heard of the goddess that you spoke of, and B, I had no idea that women, they almost sounded equal in a way because they could own land, and land could be passed down to them. And at some point, the world flip-flopped and it became a complete man's world. Not that I love men, don't misunderstand me, but I mean,
so do I.
I mean, for a long time, the law was all land went to the first son, even, remember? And,
absolutely, primogeniture.
Yeah, exactly. So yay for you for helping to get women's voices out there and starting with such a powerful woman, because I actually thought you were going to start with Cleopatra. So,
oh, well, I used Cleopatra as an example in my afterword because people mistakenly think that women in first century were not educated and were subservient. But you have Queen Alexandria of Judea, who was highly educated. You have Cleopatra, who was remarkable. You have so many rabbinis who were either the wives or on their own teaching. Women served as judges. Women served as teachers in this time. And to me, the true antagonist in this whole series is Rome, which is the ultimate patriarchy. In Rome, women had no rights.
oh.
And they were subservient to the paterfamilia, their father, their brother, their husband. And when Rome conquered the Palestinian area from Syria down through Judea, they imposed their rights. And after the diasporas in 135 current era, they just took over and women lost all their rights.
Wow.
And they did this in other areas also. As you know, I mean, Cleopatra ruled until she lost to Rome. Mm-hmm. And then a Roman prefect, which is a governor, took over. So at that time, to me, this is a pivotal shift when there was a matriarchal structure that was honored. And when Rome, the ultimate patriarch, came in, it subdued that. And it subdued it through military might.
Wow. Military might. Sounds like stuff still going on today.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with modern times.
I know. But there has been so many incredible women of the past, and even today. And so it takes a special person like you to bring them to life and to educate not only my generation, but the future generations. And I really admire you, because I know from only doing one historical fiction, and it took 5 years of just studying it because I wanted to get the history correct. So for you to give of your time and your love and your effort to read and make sure you have it right. I mean, it's incredible.
Thank you. Well, there is not much written in Roman history or Hebraic history about this time or about women, but I went to Egyptian sources. I went to, of course, Josephus. We have an 1850 edition of his work, who was the first Jewish historian. But then the Greeks, they all around the area, they reported. And something very interesting, just as an aside, you gave me an aside, but Cleopatra would hire mercenaries, and she paid 3 times the going rate in order to get mercenaries from Galilee, because they were the toughest, most incredible warriors in the whole area. And if you read Hebraic history, every revolution, again, whether it was against the Greeks or the Romans, anything came from Galilee. Wow. And if you think about it, Jesus came from Galilee.
That's right.
And there's less written about Jesus than there is about a warlord, Barabbas. And he comes down to us in the scriptures as being the one set up. Here's Barabbas, here's Jesus, and the Jews screamed to let Barabbas go. I think that is fictional to switch the blame to the Jews from the Romans, but everything started and happened from Galilee. And so it is fascinating, but we have proof that other Mediterranean basin rulers really valued the fighting strength of these men.
Isn't that incredible? On another slightly different topic, in your studies, do you read Aramaic, or was it always translated for you?
I don't, but I try to go to second sources, people that I really trust who did it, which is where I get how words were translated incorrectly for this. But one of these days I may read Aramaic, but from Hebrew, I work with Hebrew scholars, Shauna Locks and Jackie Paul, who are Hebrew scholars. And so they helped me a lot with that. So Hebrew was somewhat spoken, but mostly used for prayer and religious text. So Aramaic was the common tongue.
That's very interesting.
I would say in this time in Jerusalem, they would have spoken Greek, Aramaic, Hebrew, and some would have spoken Latin, but Rome was pretty new on the scene. They only came in when the last of the Hasmoneans died. And then the 3 sons, unfortunately, appealed to Rome to say, can you help us settle this? And Rome said, yeah, we'll settle it. It's ours.
It's our way, or the
yeah,
way.
Exactly. The fox in the hen house.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely right. Do you have a favorite, besides Mary Magdalene, a favorite woman that you really just admire so much?
I do. If you see behind me this what is it? Embroidery up here. So after I finish with the Magdalene, which will be 4 books, then I'm going to work on Ermengarde of Narbonne, who was a phenomenal woman who ruled for almost 70 years on her own without a husband in what is now southern France, but it was called Languedoc or Aquitania, and she was a contemporary of Eleanor of Aquitaine. And I admire the fact that in definitely a man's world, she said, I can do this, I will do this, and I need no man to help me. She was so advanced for her time. We're talking the 12th century. And she had Cathars, which were considered heretics to the Catholic Church. She had Muslims. She's had Hebrews, and she had women on her inner council.
Wow.
And she ruled a town that there was a saying, not for all the gold in Narbonne. It was the richest seaport in all of the Mediterranean.
Wow. Sounds like our leaders today could learn from her.
They could. And the thing was, so historically, excuse me if I get my nerd on here.
No,
with
I
history,
love this. I love this.
But Genoa and Venice were the two trading capitals at that time, and they were at war. They would sink each other's ships. Nobody could get them together. Ermengarde signed a treaty to trade with both of them.
She created a miracle. Wow.
She did. She also is the one, although it's ascribed to Eleanor of Aquitaine, but she developed the code of chivalry and courtly love. And she was that one bright light in that time that supported art and knowledge, and troubadours, raconteurs, all of this art, all kinds of artists. And she said that in order for life to be full, it must be filled with art, with beauty, and with compassion.
Oh, I can see why you love her. I'm already a fan.
I do.
Well, now you have a book behind you. Would you like to share it?
Oh, sure. I have it. If you can see here,
Yeah.
House of the Moon.
Yes.
South, Surviving the 60s. And when I started out, my publisher, I was writing about women marginalized by history. And he knew about my experience in the 60s. And he said, you are history. You know, write this book because you did survive the prejudice against women. Also, my sister, who was 4 years older than I was at the time, her boyfriend, and this sounds bad, but dealt drugs to all the bands that came through LA. But we're talking like you sell it for, some pot and stuff. He wasn't a cartel big dealer. But so at 14, I got co-opted into this and spent a lot of time with people like Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and actually lived the 60s. And as an editorial review said, it's like going to sleep and waking up in the trenches.
Wow. And, it's interesting to me because your world in the 60s is so different from my world. I grew up in a very well protected home. And if you heard about drugs, only bad people did those things, and you should never take something that would hurt the temple of the Lord inside you. And so I don't even know that world you're speaking of. So it'll be interesting to read because I think it's important for all of us to, if we really want to have a good understanding and work together as human beings, we have to understand different people's worlds, don't you think?
Exactly. And that's with all my books. I put out there what the world was like, and I'm not challenging anyone's faith or anyone's belief or anybody's actions. I'm saying this is what it was like, which is what I'm doing with The Last Magdalene. But I could quickly read just the cover blurb, which will give you an idea. Should I do that?
Oh, yes, that would be great. Yes, please.
Okay. So this is just the cover blurb. From encounters with Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, and other legends of rock and roll to loaded shotguns at home, sexual violence in the street, and flying high on drugs just to get by, this fast-paced memoir brings to life Conrad's quest to change the world, only to find herself changed by the times. House of the Moon is a haunting and ultimately triumphant memoir about coming of age during the decade that changed the world.
Wow. And it is a decade that changed the world. It's a wonderful synopsis of it all. And I think it's something that everybody out there, you need to order this book. Can we find it on and local bookstores as well as on Amazon and Barnes and Noble?
Right now it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can get it in hard copy or ebook. Mm-hmm. And it, just to let you know, the person who saved my life was a high school English teacher, David Sundstrand, and he's in here because he saw in me not this freak that dressed in black and, you know, was always just out. I was in the, quote, dumbbell English class because all my druggy friends were in there. And a teacher said, this woman's smart, and kicked me up from dumbbell English to college prep. Wow. And he took me in and gave me my love of literature, of reading. He filled out scholarships for me and had me write essays for it. So I got scholarships to go to college, and I became a high school English teacher because of him. And what is interesting is 45 years later, because of this book, he found me and we got to meet. And it was incredible. And he's still alive. He's 87 now, I think, and is a writer himself. And, you know, teachers make a difference.
Absolutely.
They absolutely do.
Yeah.
And to instill the love of reading, of literature, of learning outside of your narrow perspective is so important. And if anything, I would love the youth of today to just explore all kinds of reading. One of my writing teachers said, you actually learn more from a book you don't like than from a book you like.
That is a great quote. That is so true. And you're right. Teachers are incredible, and they can make or break a child depending on how well they are as an educator and their philosophy in the classroom. The other thing is that I liked history, but I found it boring, and because they were just making us memorize dates and so forth. When I went to the university, I had the most amazing history teacher, and he had us read. It was American history again. I was like, oh, my stars, how many times, you know?
I don't want to do this.
What was so incredible about him, and the reason I'm spending this time with you, is I think you'd appreciate it, is we had to read books from the English point of view, and what an eye-opener it was. And I fell in love from history that day forward. I just fell in love with it because I was like, I never thought about it from their point of view. And that's why I say it's so great that you have this book, The House of Moons, to help people like myself who grew up in just a beautiful, loving environment. But even my high school, like you mentioned, people in school that did drugs, like I couldn't name a soul. If they did it, they kept it very quiet. It was just a totally different world. So
it was not quiet when I did it, but it was the 60s.
Yeah, your 60s was different though. Mine was all love and happiness. But like I said, I grew up and found out my parents were protecting me. So
well, and my dad was an undercover narcotics agent for the state. And my mother, unfortunately, because it was such an physically abusive relationship, she turned to alcohol. So she was pretty much a fall down drunk. Mm-hmm. So my sister and I raised ourselves.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Basically, and got into this. And as I said, it was to take drugs. I did it to make my life normal. That's how abnormal my life was. So the book is very dark. It's very disturbing, but it's very real. And I teach at a lot of writers' conferences. And one of the classes I teach is writing real, writing raw. Mm-hmm. So how do you get your readers to feel what you felt?
Exactly.
And to me, that's the importance of doing it. But also, I hated history. I was a psychology and English major in junior college. When I went to four-year college, the university, I had to take a history class, and this man made me fall in love with history. So I switched majors to English and history.
Wow, he really did a number on you.
Oh, he did. And what you said, he had us read English versions. He actually was the first one to have us read the Greek take on the rebellions in Judea.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like, okay, we don't get to write history again. Until the lion learns to write, the hunter will always be glorified.
That's
So
right.
read what other people have to say about us, about our times,
Mm-hmm.
and embrace that. Be
Mm-hmm.
open to it.
Absolutely. So I'm a former classroom teacher, and one of the things I would do with my older students is I collect Life magazines, and I'll collect magazines from different parts of the world that are in English. And if I know, so I was a curriculum director, so I would be working with kids from different angles. And if I knew they were studying a certain topic, I would bring in these magazines from different countries as well as in our own, so they could read what was written right then. And
Yes.
They always found that fascinating because, as you said, the books are written by men and the person who wins. And so it has a different twist on it all. But I'm excited about your particular books. And I would also like to hear about how you help the voice of a woman, and how your passion for helping women not be marginalized.
To do that in my book, well, in House of the Moon, it was my being honest with myself. And people have said, how could you expose yourself that much? Because I do. I don't make good decisions in the book. I don't come out looking great in the book. I come out looking like a very disturbed teenager. But to me, you need to be honest. And when I do research, like back into first century Judea, I use a lot of the different sources to find out what life was like, and then to use my imagination, because I think it was 2,000 years ago, but I don't think humans have changed that much in 2,000 years.
No, they have not.
Unfortunately. So if you are, I used a lot of occupations of countries, to modern countries to see what it was like for people. So like in Judea, their money was devalued. They were taxed beyond reason. You can read some of the Syrian governors' takes on things. The very fact that big topic now is the slavery. Well, Rome was notorious for, if anybody rebelled, they took people as slaves. And so I read a lot about how Rome treated their slaves and looked at that to see the Roman attitude in order to come up with what it would be like if you were walking down the street of Jerusalem and a Roman soldier came by. What would it be like? And so to find that, and then to find the intrinsic value, humanity, caring, loving aspect, the fertility of women, our want to embrace the injured, to help those that have less than us. And I put that into the women that I write. And then look at additional sources to see how that would be. So the priestesses of Ashara were in the last Magdalene were midwives, and they were healers. And as I said, when babes were hard to birth, it was a priestess women would call, not a priest. And so there were different rights for women than for men. And even just the way that our menstruation was treated, it wasn't always considered dirty and filthy and stained. It was considered a proof of the life-giving force. So in my book, I also refer, like, I'm sure you've heard of the red tent.
Oh, yes. And the book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the book and the Book of Longing, which was just out, where women's rights were honored. So in the last Magdalene, I have a beautiful ritual for when young girls begin their first menses, where they're taken into a cave and they're honored. And when they come out, they're dressed in robes and honored. You're now a woman, as opposed to, oh, well, yeah, just go away and hate it or be ashamed of it. So does that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. And you hit a topic of mine, which is I'm always on a bandwagon that when I was growing up, you couldn't wait to start puberty. It was exciting. We celebrated it. My aunts, my mom, we all had a big celebration. So I like this.
Wonderful.
So, I did the same thing with my girls. And I'm like, I wish we could have these commercials stop saying, oh my God, it's happening this month, instead like, oh my gosh, you're so blessed. There's so many lovely things about it. So maybe you and I can start a bandwagon together on that.
Absolutely. I would love to. And like I say, there's a beautiful ritual in it that I looked up, women's rituals at that time. And there's quite a bit. You have to kind of dig for it. And I don't know if you can see behind my pictures, the Magdalene, but all my books are back there. About women's rituals and the different stages. And a big influence on me right now is Michael Meade, who is with the Mosaic Foundation, and he deals a lot with the rites of passage and how it's so missing in our life. And he has mostly dealt with young men, but he's also dealing with women now, and that each phase of our life is a celebration. Absolutely. And now at my age, I'm getting to be the crone. So I would like to impart wisdom and say, okay, I'm past childbearing. Now it's time for me to share the wisdom that I've gained through a life. And that's what I intend to do through these books, whether it's through House of the Moon or The Last Magdalene or The Lost of the Holy or dealing with Ermengarde. Yeah, to me, it's all a part of us to say, we've passed a milestone. Let's celebrate it.
Absolutely.
Life is incredible.
Right. Life is incredible. And I always say that if you woke up and you have air in your lungs, you've already been blessed for the day. So you need to figure out what you can do to help bless others and spread kindness and joy. That's kind of how I see everything. But then again, I wish I had a magic wand, and ding, you're happy, ding, you're happy. And quit thinking those bad thoughts, But celebration of life. I remember my grandma said, I don't talk about my age, not because I'm not proud of it, because I am so thankful to be alive. But you remember this, Miss Patricia, because my full name is Patricia DIANN. So anyway, if they want to get something across, they would say Miss Patricia, or Miss Pris sometimes. And she'd say, when you get past 50, you just start saying W, because that's wisdom. Your wisdom's coming in, and it's your duty to help share what you've learned. Mm-hmm. You don't tell people what you've learned. They don't want to hear it. Their ears will be closed. But when they ask, just take a deep breath, think, and share things that you've learned. And I've always liked that. What do you think?
I absolutely agree. And I think our best sharing comes from how we live our lives, mm-hmm. of being kind, of being inclusive, mm-hmm. of being loving to people. someone is angry with you, you find a way not to be angry with them and to help them get over it. And if they can't get over it, then to me, I'm sorry for them. But I try never to engage in anger and just say, you know what, you do what you do. And one of my precepts is that it would be good for people to agree to disagree.
Amen. That is so true.
And just, you don't have to be wrong for me to be right. And vice versa.
I like that too. So if you can imagine, we are almost out of time.
How did that happen?
I think we've just been having a great time. But before we go completely close out, I'm curious to know if you ever give speaking engagements and people can come and hear you talk, because you have so much wisdom to share and knowledge with us. Do you do speaking engagements?
Well, thank you. Yes, I usually teach at writers' conferences at PNWA. I'm on regularly on the Creative Academy for Writers. And this year I'm kind of taking a hiatus. I'm going to southern Spain to do some research. But typically, yes. And I'm represented by Abundantly Social.
Oh, yes.
And we're going to be doing some booking tours at libraries and bookstores and giving talks. And then as soon as my website gets back in shape, because we're changing books, I will have blogs. I'm always open for people to email me at donna@donnaconrad.com. I'm completely open to talk about most everything.
That is fabulous. And you already did my next soundbite, is how they could reach you. So not only can they reach you via your email, your website, even though I know it's in moving up and being revitalized in ways, but also they can reach your books. Would you like to share again where?
Oh, at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Right now, the book came out a while ago. When the last Magdalene comes out, April 9th of 2024, it'll be in all bookstores. That, and I'm on Facebook at Donna D. Conrad. And I don't do Twitter much. I'm trying to do Instagram. I'm moving into that. But I mean, Amy at Abundantly Social is helping a lot. And so I'm just stepping up my game.
Amy is incredible. So you and I have some commonalities and people that help us with our work. I want to thank you for coming. It's been my pleasure to have you here on the Corner Bookstore, and I hope you will consider coming back.
I would love to. I think we could talk for a while. And
so.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been my pleasure to be here.
Okay.
To be continued.
To be continued, and I can't wait to get a hold of your books. And please start that GoFundMe page for that movie.
Oh, yes. Let people know. I actually have friends that are screenwriters, and they're already talking to me about doing a screenplay for it.
Okay, you go, girl.
We'll see.
Take care.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this show. It's just wonderful.
You're quite welcome.
Okay.
See you again soon. Bye. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in for our show today. Donna Conrad is incredible. It's so lovely to meet someone who's so knowledgeable, who works so hard to study and make sure she has the history correct for her books. And so please make sure you go to her website, go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or your favorite bookstore and order her books, and be watching for when she starts all her blogs on her website. That's it for the Corner Bookstore. Stay tuned for next week. Until next time, have a blessed day. Bye for now.